3, chapter 64, continuing with verse 15. Ego differentiates the soul from our ideas of space and time, and stirs within it like the breath of winds by reason of its subjectivity of thoughts. The subject of thoughts is known as ego. It is also called various other names like intellect, the soul, the mind, illusion, maya, and nature, prakriti. The mind, cetas, which is the subject of thoughts, contemplates on the nature of elementary matter, and thus becomes of itself the quintessence of the 5 elements. The quintessential mind next becomes like a spark of fire and remains like a dim star, a nebula in the emptiness of the yet unborn universe. The mind takes the form of a spark of fire by thinking on its essence, which gradually develops itself like a seed in the form of the cosmic egg by its internal force. The same fiery spark, figuratively called the cosmic egg, Brahmananda, became like a snowball in water and conceived the great Brahma within its hollow womb. Then, as enormous as sensuous spirits assume some bodily form at pleasure, although they dissolve like magic city in empty air, so this Brahma appeared to view in an embodied form. Some of them appear in the form of immovable, and others in those of moving beings. Some assume the shapes of Ariels, or whatever their fondness leads them to choose for themselves. Thus, in the beginning of creation, the firstborn living being had a form for himself as he liked. Afterwards, he created the world in his form of Brahma, or Vrichi, creator. Whatever the self-born and self-willed soul wishes to produce, the same appears immediately to view, as produced of its own accord. So this is an interesting statement. This, all that we have been reading so far today, shows the process of the manifestation of existence. And it begins when ego differentiates the soul In verse 16 it says, the subject of thoughts is known as ego. So this gives us a very clear stream of events that occur as the jiva emerges from Shiva, Krishna. And so it's like a breadcrumb trail that we will follow back to reach the state of non-existence again. This whole state of existence only occurs because of the mind. The mind in the form of the ego. The state of existence disappears when there is no mind. When the mind is annihilated, one returns to the unity of pure being. So our process is now going in the reverse of what is being expressed here. We find that once the jiva forms, it is like a snowball starting to roll down a snow-covered hill. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes. Verse 25. Brahma, originating in divine consciousness, was by his nature the primary cause of all, without any cause of his own. He appointed the acts of men to be the cause of their transition from one state to another in the course of the world. So this is an important statement as well. The creator of the universe, Brahma, created the first human physiologies, and these human physiologies became the host or the actors of more jivas. So we have a paradoxical situation in which in this universe there is only one being, that is the creator of this being, this universe, and everything else is illusion. Within that illusion, there are innumerable jivas. well, maybe not innumerable, but billions and billions and billions. At this point, there are 7.8, maybe it's even 7.9 by now. Population continues to grow. Human beings on Earth. Each one is attached or is connected to a jiva. Each human being is a dream creature, not really real, but from the perspective of that human being, quite real. From the perspective of the creator, not real. Just a dream creature. Just something created in the mind of the creator. And so if we go to one dream creature human being, it's like that individual is the tip of one finger. And if you look at only the tips of the fingers of the hand, you don't look below the tip of the finger, looks like we have several beings. But as we go deeper, we see how all these beings are connected into a wholeness until ultimately the realization dawns. There's only one being, and that is the Creator. So simultaneously in this universe, there is one jiva, Brahman, the Creator, and there are hundreds and thousands of billions of jivas, 7.8 plus billion, are connected with human physiologies. The others are connected with other life forms of the 4 million species in which a jiva can incarnate. Verse 26. Thoughts naturally arise in the mind to subside in itself, like water foaming, but acts done thereby bind us, like passing froth or flying birds are caught by ropes and trapped. So once the jiva gets rolling, it incarnates into a body, and in that body it performs actions. And the performance of those actions, if not in perfect alignment with the divine karmic traces, create karmic traces, individual karmic traces. These individual karmic traces then provide the boundaries, the ever increasing boundaries that confine the jiva. So the jiva is going into this process of becoming more and more confined, bound, and controlled, having less and less and less freedom. freedom being the existence without any boundaries, which is pure being. We see now, and this has always been, but it's very obvious today in the physical world, how individual human beings are more and more becoming like domesticated animals, dogs and cats. They're owned by some other being. They're controlled by some other being. They're moving into the situation of being sustained by some other being. The whole society is changing. In the United States, we're moving into what we call universal basic income. Every person who was free to engage in an occupation to earn money is being considered non-essential, a useless eater, one who simply consumes, basically like the domesticated dog or cat. The dog may have some minor purpose to make noises whenever another being is in the vicinity, kind of like a living alarm clock. The cat has very little purpose. It doesn't warn the owner of any approaching beings very much. It basically just eats and sleeps, meanders around. Well, human beings are being transitioned into that level of lifestyle. The cat is completely dependent on his owner for food and water and shelter. And having become domesticated, if the cat is thrown out into the world, it doesn't know how to find food. And it just eventually dies. Now, maybe it hasn't lost its ability to chase mice and eat them, but likely it's even losing that. Well, the human being is going into that same stage. We're being taken into a stage of total dependency on our owners. We have owners now. The owners are the government. And who owns the government? There are a few individuals who own the government. They call themselves the global elite. They used to call themselves the Illuminati, or they would be the royalty, the kings of the world, the ones who own everything. And we're returning to that state in which almost everyone is going to be owned by someone else. Domesticated. And what will happen is the owners will decide which of the flock that he owns are useful and which are useless. And those that are useless, he will exterminate. He won't waste resources on them. kind of like drowning baby kittens. Don't need so many kittens. We'll just drown them all. This is happening now through the processes of abortion and giving scores, if not hundreds, of vaccinations to newborn babies, overwhelming their delicate nervous systems and destroying their life in the process in some cases. Now the injections are moving to the adults. This is the process of culling the population of useless eaters. And it is the karma of the people that has put them in that situation. Their karmic traces have become so dense, they have literally built physical constraints that keep them even from existing in a human body. All this from their acts of the past. Verse 27, thoughts are the seeds of action, and action is the soul of life. Past acts produce future consequence, but inaction is attended with no result. The individual soul bears its vitality like a seed bears the germ in its bosom. This sprouts forth in future acts, like the seed in various forms of leaves, fruits, and flowers of trees. All other individual souls that appear in the various forms of their bodies had such forms given to them by Brahman according to their acts and desires in pre-material creations in former Kalpa ages. So people's own personal acts are the causes of their repeated births and deaths in this or other world. They ascend higher or sink lower by virtue of good or bad deeds that proceed from their hearts and the nature of their souls. Our actions are the efforts of our mind, and they shape our good or bad destinies according to their merit or demerit. All fate and luck in the existing world are the fruits and flowers of past acts, even of those done in prior Kalpa ages. This is called their destiny. So we're faced with the destiny now of the human race. The weight of karmic traces has become so heavy and dense that the entire human race is apt to perish. everyone. This is not the right time for that. At the end of Kali Yuga in 427,000 years, yes, it's time for all human life to end for a while. All life ends at that point. Today is not the time. So the universe has many natural, spontaneous checks and balances that keep itself going. It has the agency of Vishnu, the maintainer of the universe. And some people, those here in this session today, everyone in the Sahasra Sirsha Brahman meditation, have chosen to be agents of action to restore proper balance in the universe and stop the decline of the human race to zero. And what are our actions? Every day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. We are engaged in our actions to balance karmic traces. And as we balance the karmic traces that we have responsibility for, that have been assigned to us in this lifetime, we're balancing karmic traces for the entire human race. Each one of us that reaches Jivan Mukti, having balanced huge amounts of karmic traces to uncover the divine karmic traces, to still the mind, to become enlightened, is going to have a major impact on the collection of karmic traces now, weighing down humanity, suffocating humanity, causing it to move in the direction of extinction. So we are performing a very important service to humanity by attending to our own enlightenment. And that's what's important. Fortunately, we're not the only ones. There are many in the universe now attending to their enlightenment, making a difference. Only this is going to stop the progressive deterioration of society, lack of freedoms, lack of ability to sustain life that the human race is now facing. This is the destiny of the human race. Extinction is now its destiny. And we are doing the actions that will change that destiny. Chapter 65. nature of the individual soul as the same as universal consciousness. Vasishtha continued, at first, mind sprang from the supreme cause of all. This mind is the active soul, which resides in the supreme soul. A very important statement, isn't it? At first. This is, again, we're going back to where did the jiva arise? And one thing we understand is the jiva sprang from the supreme cause of all. The mind hangs in doubt between what is and what is not, and what is right and what is wrong. It forgets the past by its willful negligence, like the scent of a fleeting odor. Yet, there is no difference between these seeming contraries. The dualities of Brahma and the soul, the mind and illusion, Maya, the agent and act, and the world of phenomena and that of ideals all blends together in the unity of God. There is only one universal soul, displaying its consciousness like a vast ocean, and extending its consciousness like an endless sea. What is true and real shines forth amidst all that is untrue and unreal. So the subjective essence of the mind exists amidst all its airy and fleeting dreams in sleep. Thus the world is both true and untrue as regards its existence in God and its external phenomena. The false conception, either of the reality or unreality of the outer world, does not spring in the mind, which is conscious only of its operations and not of outward phenomena. This conception is like the deception of a magic show and is attendant to all sensuous minds. It is the long habit of thinking the unreal world to be real that makes it appear as such to the unthinking, like a protracted sleep makes its visionary scenes appear to be true to the dreaming soul. It is the lack of reflection that causes us to mistake a man in a block of wood. Lack of spiritual light misleads the mind from its rationality and makes it take its false imaginations for true, like children. Through their fear and lack of true knowledge, are impressed with a belief of ghosts in shadows. This is a very significant statement. It is the long habit of thinking. The habit of thinking. So what is a habit? It is performing an act again and again that may or may not have any progressive value at all. It may temporarily appear to have some progressive value, but often a habit is just a repetitive action. It is like the broken record on the phonograph, skipping from one track to the other again and again and again. This is the nature of karmic traces. It's not a very neat and tidy pile. It is a quagmire of unrelated and related tracks in the mind, and the mind continually runs up and down those tracks by thinking. It is thinking that makes the world appear to be real. And it is thinking that makes the world eventually disappear. It's what we're thinking that is important. It is discrimination. Thinking is a process of discrimination, fracturing the wholeness into something distinct. If we fracture the wholeness into something distinct by thinking a mantra, then the habit of thinking the mantra will have a very beneficial effect because it will balance karmic traces. If our habit of thinking is not directed to thinking a mantra, but thinking about something that happened yesterday or might happen tomorrow, it is completely useless thinking, creating no beneficial effect. And by beneficial effect, we mean that which leads us into the light, which balances karmic traces. That's the only beneficial effect possible. In verse 9, the mind is inclined of its own tendency to assign an individual soul to the divine spirit, which is devoid of name, form, or figure, and is beyond comprehension. So this is an interesting statement. Which reinforces what was previously said, that the illusion that everyone is embedded in, most everyone, is caused by the thinking of the mind. Knowledge of the living state, personality, leads to that of egoism, which is the cause of reasoning. The ego is always labeling, differentiating between things. This again introduces sensations and finally the conscious body. This bondage of the soul in body necessitates a heaven and hell for the lack of its liberation. Thus, the acts of the body become the seeds of our endless reincarnations in this world. There is no difference between the soul, consciousness, and life. So there is no duality in the individual soul and consciousness, or in the body and its acts, which are inseparable from each other. Acts are the causes of bodies, and the body is not the mind. The mind is one with egoism, and the ego is the individual soul. The individual soul is one with divine consciousness, and this soul is all in the Lord God of all. So in this one verse, everything that we have been studying since the beginning of the Yoga Vashishta is encapsulated. This is the only verse you need. It says it all. But that's the way the Yoga Vajishta works. It says it all again and again and again and again, because what it's doing is it is tracing the divine karmic traces. Which are helping us to balance our individual karmic traces and return to that state of the divine karmic trace. But it is just a step in the process, because we have to go beyond the divine karmic traces as well. In fact, we have to balance all the divine karmic traces. So this is a glimpse into the immensity of the project. This is the Goloka project. We thought all we had to do were the individual karmic traces. Nope. That's just the beginning. Once we get those balanced, then we go to work on the divine karmic traces. And that's just another step. And then once we get all those balanced, we're still not done. We have to go to work on the supreme karmic traces, the supreme divine karmic traces. The acts, the things that have manifested from pure being, Shiva, that is Krishna, in order to become who we are, the self, the pure being, Shiva.